There are a ton of tools out there claiming that they're going to solve your game dev process problems, but most teams end up serving that system rather than having it serve them. Today, I'm going to share the 3 simple things you need to do to keep a team, a game startup, or an R&D project in game development moving in the right direction. This is the Building Better Games podcast, where we help leaders in game dev to stop focusing on the wrong problems and start leading their teams and games to success. I'm Benjamin Karsage, a leadership trainer and coach with a background in the military and game production. Today, I'm going to give you a basic guide to set up or simplify your process and explain not just what you need, but why it matters, so you can tell if the things you're using are working or not. In the last few years, I've worked with studios of all sizes that struggle a ton to find the right processes to support their teams. They may be using Handsoft, Jira, Favro, Notion, Asana, ShotGrid, Google Docs, Microsoft Project, whatever else. And a huge part of their leaders and often the devs' existence is spent updating tickets, doing things like assigning points, making comments, ensuring compliance to what seems to be an ever-growing set of work management rules and tools that try to solve everything. What is also true, the most important conversations are often skipped in these environments. Little time is spent thinking about why their game would matter to players, what the experience is they are trying to create, and what would be the small number of things that would either help them learn the most or help them deliver and test the core experience they want to create. When I get into these situations, I often suggest a simplification of their work system. I'm not saying all process is bad. In fact, a lot of it's useful, but too many studios have way too much going on way too soon, and they need to pull back and focus on the basics. So whether you are working with a team as part of a larger org or a small startup or indie studio, here's the basic 3 things I suggest you have and my preferred tool set if you are fully or partially remote. First, you want some statement of your vision and supporting thoughts to help people understand what it is you are trying to create and why it matters. Visions can live in a bunch of different online formats. I'm not attached to any one. I often use Google Slides when I'm giving people templates for this or drafting it. I've seen them in Google Docs. You can put them on a whiteboard if you're physically co-located. There's a lot of different ways you can do it. The key thing is the vision creates a clear picture of what it is you're trying to do at an abstract level to the player. So what is the player experience you are trying to create? And they become a differentiator for you to be successful because they help everyone in your org stay aligned. Visions are also the first thing that I see go out of date or never get made in so many companies. Often this is because everyone assumes we share a picture of what the future holds, and so we don't have to talk about it. We all know where we're going, right? We all know the game we're trying to make. If you spend any time in game development, you've probably seen that not be true. And in fact, it's not true more often than it is. And by the way, even when a vision is present, it often falls into an unhelpful trap. So a few things to keep in mind around visions that I just want you to hold and then avoid. So you don't want to have visions that look like this. First, conceptual language. Conceptual language visions are things like it's a unique, exciting experience where the player is thrilled to advance and become more powerful over time. It's like, okay, yeah, you sort of told me a little bit about a game, but it was pretty weak, and there's a lot of games that meet that description. Is that helpful for me as I go about trying to make this game? And so conceptual language are these high-level, very abstract things like unique or exciting, emotional, engaging, fun. Is there someone out there that's trying to make a game that doesn't capture some or even most of those words? Probably not. So they're not helpful. They don't help you define your vision. Be careful of using them. They are not useful in differentiating what your game should be from what it should not be. Second thing, to avoid prototype theory. Prototype theory is the idea that I can compare my game to other games or genres or something that I have a reference for, and that'll help people understand it. Now, this one's partially true sometimes, but you have to be really careful. The wonderful example that I love to use is if I crossed Halo with Candy Crush, what does that look like? And if I asked 10 different game developers to give me their version of Halo crossed with Candy Crush, I might get 10 very different answers. There's a lot of different phrases you could say. Oh, it's like an RTS set in the Lord of the Rings universe, or imagine MMO, but I don't know. I guess some of these are out now, but will be a universe that hasn't had an MMO built on top of it yet. You can even just use what it is. It's an MMO built on the Star Trek universe. Okay, a couple of those have already been made. Which one are you talking about? What does that look like specifically? often we think prototype theory helps us understand something. And to some extent, I think it does. It's better than the conceptual language, but it doesn't get detailed enough. And it leaves a lot vague while pretending like we are actually aligned, because we can all say, oh, got it. Yeah, Halo Cross with Candy Crush. Yeah, I know how to do that. No, you don't. And you really don't. You have to talk a lot more about it before you truly understand it. And once you talk about it, you're going to discover things. And that's what you should write down. That becomes part of the vision, or the vivid descriptors that go around your vision, or some way for you to help people understand what the vision is. Third thing you should avoid. So we want to avoid conceptual language. We want to avoid prototype theory. We want to avoid feature lists. This is when we jump from, I want to make a game, and then we start breaking the game into a bunch of features that the game has. It has matchmaking, and it has an inventory system, and it has items, and it has level progression, and there's all these different things we could go on, and we talk about what the game is and the stuff that is in the game without talking about why that stuff comes together. There are multiple different successful and failed ARPGs that share many of the same feature sets. And it's easy to list out all those features and say, well, look at this game, and it's differentiated because it has a different set of features. Often, though, that isn't actually what differentiates it. It's how those features come together to create a compelling experience. So be wary of this one, especially because it also means that you're no longer talking about the player experience. You're just talking about the stuff you need to make, and that's something we'll talk more about later. Instead of doing conceptual language traps or prototype theory traps or featureless traps when coming up with your vision, what you're trying to do is capture the experience the player has and the experience that will be engaging to them. So the things you want to aim for with your vision is, what is the experience? What is the engaging experience you are creating for players? Some people find the fun. Some people really like that framing. For me, it's find what is engaging about your game. Why would someone play it? What motivates them to play it? And I came up with some examples. Look, these aren't perfect. This isn't my forte, but they might give you an idea. So imagine these 3 different frames on what a vision could look like that might be more useful. It doesn't necessarily fall into the conceptual language trap. It's not falling into the prototype theory trap, and it's not falling into the featureless trap. So we are creating a VR casino where players who enjoy casino games but don't want to spend money can get that Vegas feel from home. Okay, that might help align people. That might help people understand where they're trying to go. Does it answer every question about the game? No, absolutely not. But it may give that broad frame, the North Star that we're targeting. Another one, our game is a terrifying story with a grim ending that gives the player as protagonist the experience and feeling of being hunted without any way to stop their pursuer. Again, there may be a few different games that fall into this broad vision, but if I had added some other things around it, you could start seeing, okay, this is what makes this game unique. And you can see what motivates the player, what type of player might be engaged by this. Why would they find it entertaining? It's okay if your vision is similar to some other games, as long, again, as it helps you differentiate from everything else out there, because now we can actually start talking to and comparing, like, okay, what other little things we can get into the detail of it. And then thirdly, a goofy, cartoonish, and chaotic experience where short minigame interactions between friends become the basis for stories they laugh about later. Great, I can see what is motivating the player to engage with this. What are they roughly doing? That one goes into a little bit of like, hey, there's some feature callouts in there, like we're going to have mini games and things like that. But broadly, I wouldn't be offended by this as a vision. The other thing that I'll call out, I kind of just hinted at it. When you're thinking about a vision, it doesn't answer every question. It does cause conversation. It keeps people moving in the right direction and talking to each other about what it is we're trying to do. You might also include things like pillars or specific goals for the game. Whenever you do that, I recommend you prioritize things against each other. So if you have a set of goals, and goals for me might be major things you either want as part of the player experience or that are core to your game being successful in some way, they should align to the overall vision and help people understand what's most important to be doing. Prioritize them against each other. So if you have different elements of your game that you think are really important, like different loops, what loop is most important? What loop do we need to test first and learn about and make sure is true and good before we feel like we can proceed? Maybe that's our first goal. Maybe that's the first thing we should target. Pillars are a little bit different from goals. I think they're what's most important about your game. They too help people understand what matters most. So if you're making a story-driven game, you might say that, hey, one of the most important pillars we have is thematic cohesion. And after that, visual fidelity. We want to immerse people in the world. In fact, rather than visual fidelity, maybe we even say something like immersive visuals. So I want thematic cohesion and immersive visuals. Those are really, really important. And in fact, those are more important than performance for our game because this is a story-driven game. That's valuable for the team to know. That's valuable for the engineers to know, the artists to know. It allows them to make different choices than, let's say, they were making a more competitive game where gameplay clarity or performance or skill expression might be the most important things that they're targeting. And we're willing to sacrifice the quality of the story or the quality of the visuals in order to make sure that this fast-paced game hits that competitive vibe we're going for in the experience we're attempting to create. Prioritize these. If you prioritize them, it helps people make decisions. It doesn't answer every question, but it causes, again, the right conversations to happen. And a theme throughout this whole thing, we're trying to cause people who are thinking about making the best game we can make have conversations with each other. Having a vision is one of the most important things you can do to avoid wasted effort. And regardless of whether you're part of a larger org or a scrappy indie studio, waste is a serious problem. It's a serious problem everywhere I've ever seen. It's so easy to be building things that don't matter. Visions can and will change over time, and that's okay. Both the overall statement, if you have a 1 or 2 sentence, like this is my high level vision, the goals, the pillars, anything else that you associate with this, even the 3 C's, the controls, the camera, the character, some of these things might shift subtly over time as we learn and figure things out. That is okay. And I think this is actually one of the reasons people avoid the vision when they're asked, like, what is this game though? Make a vision, maybe I overconstrain myself. Don't worry about that. You want the vision, even if it's wrong, because it'll drive the right conversations and help you realize what's right. You want to know what the why of your game is. The conversations that emerge are what matter. If you don't have one, you're asking for a lot of trouble, and it will lead to no shortage of problems, one of the biggest one being waste. Couple final notes on vision. Remember to think not just about the game you are making and what's important about building it, but also thinking about the business side of things. I see some studios actually do a pretty good job crafting a vision, but they don't know how they're going to get that thing to market. And you want to be thinking, how do we market this? How do we connect it to players before they've ever played the game? If you want to have a successful game, it is worth thinking about the objectives you have from both the creative and the business side. You must have these 2 visions, and they may look different, but they should align. If your game is a competitive shooter, for example, don't talk only about the story and advertise it or market it as if it's some sort of big open world, fun single-player experience. I've seen that happen. The type of game you are making will impact things like players you want playtesting and how often playtests occur, as well as how you frame your community, and where and if you sell ads, the type of publisher you want to partner with, and what players actually are going to matter to you. Vision is the cornerstone. It's abstract and easy to skip, but if you can keep people aligned to the vision, you will dramatically increase your odds of producing a coherent game that can succeed. If you want to know more about vision, there's some podcasts I've done with Graham McAllister. He's probably the foremost thinker in this space. He's actually done literal academic research on the topic, so I'll have some links to some of his content in the show notes below. So that's the first thing. We want some type of vision deck, a description of the game that is at the player level, that talks about the experience, that helps us understand what it is we're trying to build together. This is so important because it helps us have the right conversations and drive together towards the same goal. Second thing, shared whiteboard space. So if the first thing is like that lives in a Google Doc, or it lives in a Word doc, or it lives in a corner of a mural board, or whatever it is, that's our vision statement. That helps us stay aligned. The second thing is a shared whiteboard space. It's a place where we can go as a team and just throw stuff at the wall, virtual or physical, and start like writing things down and start diagramming things and putting stuff together. Again, if I had a team, when I've had teams, I want them to have this freedom to go do this whenever they want to. Now, if you're co-located, so you're like in office, nobody's remote, nobody's hybrid, these can live on walls. They can live on literal whiteboards. You can take pictures of them if you need to share them digitally or capture previous thoughts or whatever. But if you're partially or fully remote / hybrid, I recommend Miro for this. Miro is a great digital whiteboarding tool. I am not associated with them at all. I've just been using them since way before when they were like real-time boards. I remember at one point, a company I was at stopped using them because of some security concern that I think has since been well resolved. And I was like super frustrated because it's such a great tool for whiteboarding. They have so many things you can do, so much flexibility inside the system. For me, it's just been the best digital whiteboard tool. There are others too. Some people I know love Lucidchart. There's others that are not coming to mind right now. Whatever the solution is, you want it to be a place for your team to come together and discuss what's actually happening moment to moment, that we can hop into a meeting and talk about architecture. We can talk about brainstorming. We can do a retrospective. All this stuff can just live there. You can store key concept images or start laying out the intended story arc or player experience, go through your loops and do a journey or story map if you know how to do those sorts of things. Maybe at some point in a different podcast, I'll talk about that. The point of this space is deliberately open-ended. Larger organizations may eventually have multiple boards, but honestly, farther than you think, you might be able to get away with one board that you just keep expanding and growing. And you'll have different pockets where, oh yeah, we know here's a prioritization schema we built, or here's the loops, or here's the player journey map. Here's the, I don't know, the key concept images that we're referencing. Here's our enemy, NPC brainstorming session. We have those things and they can kind of live on. And we can also move them around and shift them and still have space and continue to expand the board and work in that space. It's a very, very powerful tool. If you get large enough, eventually it will become problematic and you might want to have multiple boards going just so that different people can be in different boards at the same time. But especially if you're a small team, or especially if you've just started in your startup, dude, just have one big Miro board. Again, and if you're physically co-located, have wall space somewhere. But if that's not viable, then the digital versions of this can work. And again, my preference is Miro. And as I mentioned before, you can even store your vision on it. I would recommend that the official vision lives somewhere else because Miro can be a little bit annoying to constantly keep up to date versus when you're dealing with primarily text, which vision decks often are, as compared to slides or a Google Doc or something like that. But hey, you keep a copy of it on the board. That also helps people align, helps people see that. Maybe it's big and in the middle. And so whenever someone goes to the board, they see the vision and then they go off and they do what they need to do on the board. So key thing here, make sure that the space functions like a collective whiteboard. Don't make it something that gets too structured or regimented. Yes, you might have cordoned off sections that capture key things, or here's a little prioritization board or whatever it is. We don't want that deleted. But if people feel like they can't just jump into it together and start throwing up random sticky notes, whether that's in a digital space or a real space, and just graphing things out or debating their way through the problems that they're facing together, it's not serving its purpose. Whether digital or physical, this should be the play space for your team to just collaborate about whatever they need to collaborate about. And you need that open and free for them. So first thing we want the vision deck. We want an understanding of where we're trying to go. Second thing we want this whiteboard space. We want a space for people to play. We want the space for them to collaborate, to do whatever they need to do and brainstorm and come up with ideas. And it's just very open-ended and highly flexible. Teams that don't have this often try to shoehorn it into more structured systems, and it causes all kinds of weirdness as you're fighting the tools half the time to get it done. I am a big fan of having a Miro board, or again, some sort of digital whiteboard if I'm remote or hybrid at all, because it allows us to just go and play. And it's very important for teams when we're doing game development. There's so much uncertainty in the space. There's so much collaboration required for us to really do our best work. A space for us to go and do that collaboration is very, very helpful. Okay. So those two things. Third thing, a visual task board. Simple set of columns to track what's actually being worked on at any given moment. Some people call this a Kanban board or a Scrum board. It's honestly, both are very, very similar in some ways. I know some people are getting all offended now, but roughly we have a set of things that are, hey, here's the stuff we know we want to do with the most important things at the top. And then here's the stuff that's in progress. And here's the stuff that needs review. And here's the stuff that's done, or whatever your workflow steps are. You can put those in. You want to know what's in active development at any given time. You may also want to know who's doing it. Sometimes you can have people assigned to things. I've got some different opinions on that, but if you do that, this can also be a place where you say, hey, this person's working on this, and that person's working on this, and this person's working on that. So we know what people are working on at any given moment. The reason I tend not to do that is because I want us all thinking about how we move the most important things together. And when you assign it to one person, they feel personal ownership and other people feel less ownership of it. But, that's a split hair I can talk about some other time. If you are co-located, I like having this visual tracking board up in a physical wall. But most people are at least partially remote or hybrid. And so there are some good digital solutions to this. Before I go into what those solutions are, I want to talk about the biggest problem I see. The biggest problem I see with these visual task boards is how people start overbuilding the system. Whether that's through the detailed assigning of every ticket inside of it, it can be an overfocus on estimation and nuance. This is how many hours and days and whatever this is going to take, or reporting. I'm really just trying to use the system to report up everything that's happening to more and more senior layers of the organization so that everybody feels like they can see what's happening. They have visibility into what's going on. Those things do matter, but they're not what this is for. You even get people that create this overly rigorous standard of what constitutes a good ticket, and they add 1 million fields someone has to fill out. And the board starts to become this thing everyone is serving, rather than everybody serving the vision and ultimately the player. We end up a slave to our work system. You don't want to be there. And too often people think these lists of stuff are the reason they don't need a vision, because just because that feature list idea we talked about earlier, that trap that we can fall into. Well, if I've listed out everything I need to build within my visual task board of some kind, well, we know what we're building. It's our backlog. That's what we're building. That's our vision, right? Unfortunately not. While we do need to make stuff in order to achieve the vision, simply building lots of stuff will not get you to the vision you want. An analogy I've used for this before, imagine you were building a car and you had a bunch of people working to build car parts for you. And everyone just worked as hard as they could on all kinds of different car parts. And whenever you had a finished part, you sort of opened the door, the internal door to your garage or whatever, and you just tossed the part in there. And this happened for a long time, and everybody kept tossing parts in the garage. And eventually you ran out of time or money or whatever, and someone went and opened the garage door, and you were all hoping it would pop up and you'd see this beautiful Ferrari or Porsche or whatever, and maybe at least a Ford Focus or something, right? And instead, there was a pile of parts. There were 6 tires, there were 2 drive chains, there was no muffler, there were 3 steering wheels, there were only 3 seats. Like, it's all just sitting in a big pile. Even if all you'd managed to do with all the time you had is put like a bike together, you'd be better off than the mess you've got with a whole bunch of things that you probably don't need and missing some of the key things you do need. This applies in game dev. You want this simple visual task board to capture what is being worked on, but you want to make sure it ladders up to the vision and goals that are most important for you to succeed as a game and studio. Don't get caught up in the day-to-day ticket tracking or in trying to capture every little detail in the cards. Think of this board as a place to capture what is moving right now and a reminder to have conversations about what it is and why it matters most. This is another way for us to stay aligned. That's what all 3 of these are, honestly. They're ways for us to have the right conversations to stay aligned on where we're trying to go here. Okay. Now that I've said all that, let me give you my opinion. What do I prefer for a visual task board? And honestly, sometimes I've actually snuck this into Miro with small, simple teams. And you just be like, hey, I'll just have a little bit of the Miro board that will track, some columns and we'll build things. But it gets a little bit convoluted and it can be annoying to move tickets. There's not good data collection around that. Sometimes that doesn't matter, but sometimes it does. Actually, pretty early on, it can be helpful to have a little bit of data tracking around it. So my go-to here is Favreau. And full disclosure, they have been my go-to for a long time. Recently, I am also affiliated with them. So I'm an affiliate of Favreau. I'll admit my bias, but I can tell you it was present before I was ever an affiliate. I've loved their tool set compared to everything else out there. And I haven't seen anybody else ships that I really prefer, whatever else is out there. Why did I like Favreau back when I was leading teams? Why do I still like it today? High flexibility. You can do a lot with Favreau. It gives you solid options while remaining lightweight. So if you have a very small team, Favreau works just fine. Want to try a change? Go for it. It's easy to revert. When I've worked with heavier systems like Jira, I can end up quite annoyed at how centralized everything is and is to some extent designed to be, and how difficult changes can be to make, to undo. I don't like their tracking systems as well. And I just feel like it encourages everybody to try to be a bigger organization than you actually are. It encourages you to try to scale up and centralize. And I understand that that's to some extent the point of Jira. Jira is a great tool at being sold to senior leaders and reporting structures because it does some of those things very well. Unfortunately, that point works in a negative way for the people actually doing the work in game dev. You want to build your work system for the people who actually do the work, not the people managing the work or providing direction. Ideally, your work system will help everyone. And if you do this right in Favreau or elsewhere, you can achieve that. But the focus should be on aligned, cross-functional teams or individuals that are self-organizing towards shared goals. The high uncertainty that exists in game development means building systems around control and management are less likely to succeed. I get scared every time I hear of a game dev studio that's decided to adopt very heavy frameworks like Safe. And then they're putting that inside of a Jira frame because that's what everybody does, right? And it's comfortable. I disagree. I think often Jira becomes too heavyweight, and again, we become a slave to the system rather than having that system serve what we're trying to do. There are a ton of other options here. Like I said, I like something simple like Favreau. I also know some other people who really like LeanKit from back in the day. I haven't tried it in a while. I've used Trello here, actually. I know I'm like, I don't like Jira, but Trello's. But one of the issues with Trello is very quickly you exceed what it does. It is designed to be very, very, very simple. So if you're just a couple people working together on something, it can be great. As soon as you want to do any sort of hey, let's have a couple of boards and move things between them, Trello starts breaking down a bit. And so anyway, you can typically build something basic out of those bigger systems, but I feel like they pull you to be too big too fast. I just don't like that endpoint. Also, when you start with something very basic like Trello or some versions of Notion that I've seen, you generally end up getting to the point relatively quickly if you do any sort of scaling where you hit the limits of what it does, and then you go, okay, well, now let me shift to a different system. Again, this is where I like Favreau. I know I'm an affiliate and I sound like I'm an ad for them. I do think it solves an important problem that we have, which is visual task tracking, and it allows you to scale from a smaller group up to a larger group fairly easily. So anyway, yeah, they've been my favorite board since, I don't know, for like a very, very, very long time because of that high degree of flexibility. Okay, I will reiterate this though. If your team is co-located and you can get away with it, I strongly prefer a physical board. Even though it's a little bit harder to pull tracking data around it, if you create a physical board that the team can meet around regularly to discuss how the work is going on, what's most important, how we can organize to get the most valuable work done next, this has done better than any digital solution I've used. I'm not alone there, but again, not always practical. So the nice thing about this board, like having a simple board that, just has a couple of columns, just your backlog, your in progress, your review, your done, or whatever it is. Maybe you got a set of different steps based on your pipeline. You can very easily watch that board and see how your throughput flows, which allows you to start creating estimates of how long it'll take to get through the backlog. Just tracking how many items you got done over 1 week, 2 weeks a day, whatever makes sense for your context, and doing that consistently will start giving you an understanding of, oh, okay, in a typical 1 week period, we get 4 things done. So now I can make guesses about how many things I'm likely to get done in a 10-week period. It's not going to be perfect. That's okay. It is actually surprisingly accurate. And again, this tends to be a lot simpler in something like Favreau versus physical boards or something like Miro because it does some of the legwork for you. That wraps us up. We've got 3 key artifacts. So number 1, a vision deck, often living in a dock or slide deck, as well as in your physical space if co-located, on your Miro board, if that makes sense. Creates the right conversations and debates and keeps people aligned to the North Star of the game. Make sure you are thinking about the player experience and also keep in mind the business vision if you aim to be commercially successful. Second thing, a shared whiteboard space. If you are co-located, this could be literal whiteboards or wall space. If not, I recommend Miro. There's some other options available. Don't restrict the space. Keep it highly flexible. Let people use it for ideation and brainstorming and discussion. Consider everything on it temp, and then let the team capture the pieces that matter as they go along. Third, a visual task board. Whether you're using fixed iterations or a flow system to do work, some way to see what we think is most important, what's in progress, what's in review, what's done, etc. Depending on your particular workflow, this can keep people focused on the highest priority things. Remember that your visual task board serves your vision, not the other way around. Get that backwards at your peril. The visual task board should be in support of the vision, which is in support of you all creating the game you want. Do not start serving the visual task board. There are a ton of other artifacts that you might have. You've got planning options, release roadmaps, risk registries, charters, working agreements, style guides, definitions of done, architectural guidance, just so many different things that exist out there. They might have value to you, but my preference is to start small. Starting with just the core 3 things I think every team or studio should have. And this is really from that idea of how do we organize the work together. So obviously there's going to be other things you probably have, other tools. You're going to need some version of a GitHub or a Perforce or something like that. Maybe some build systems, depending on where you're at. I want to start small. I'm just talking about the how do we organize the work side, have your vision, your whiteboard space, and your task board, and you can go much further than you realize with just those few things. Keep these things as simple as you can, as long as you can. Do not become a slave to your own process. There are 3 quotes, one for each of these 3 tools or artifacts I want to share with you from W.E. Deming. He was a brilliant thinker in the space of factory work. I think they apply today. First, and this relates to the vision board, his quote is, "It is not enough to do your best. You must know what to do and then do your best." I think this just captures that idea. We have to be moving in the same direction. We have to understand where we're trying to go. If a whole ton of the best experts in the world all come together and they all go in different directions, it's not going to work. It's not going to come together. So you have to know what to do, and then we can do our best together and actually get somewhere. Second, related to the whiteboard space, W.E. Deming's quote, "The prevailing system of management has crushed fun out of the workplace." Gosh, I feel that. Especially when I see those sort of oppressive, I'm picking on Jira here, but Jira heavy environments where just everybody feels like they're just serving their Jira board. We make games. They are fun to make. We work in teams of skilled experts. Yes, there are some duds in our industry, as there are in any industry, but broadly, I have never seen a more passionate group of people about doing what we do to be successful, to serve players, to make awesome products. Why do we crush the fun out of the workplace when we are the people who understand that fun matters? Keep this whiteboard space clear. Keep it open. Allow people to have fun. Collaboration is fun. Solving cool problems is fun. If you can do that together well, allow your team to do that. Allow them to self-organize. Allow them to surprise you. And keep them oriented towards that vision, but give them that space to operate. Don't restrict them all down into collaborating through Jira ticket. Third quote related to the visual task board. Again, the W.E. Deming quote, "A bad system will beat a good person every time." I feel that in my bones too. I have seen people move between systems, and in one, they were wildly failing, and in the other, they were wildly succeeding. You can take great people and put them in a system and make them, I'm overusing the phrase, but make them a slave to that system, to that bad system, and it will beat everything good that they try to do. Leaders can do this, but so can the tools, so can the processes. So a bad system will beat a good person every time. Keep that in mind. All right. Thank you for listening to the podcast. Does this sound familiar? You're in a leadership role at a game studio. Everyone is busy working. No one has any time. But the actual game itself isn't in a good spot. Maybe it's the tech. Maybe it's the lack of a validated prototype. Maybe it's that every person seems to have a different idea about what we're trying to build. But you've got a job. There are reports to send, meetings to schedule and facilitate, the occasional season of performance reviews to go through. And everyone is always so busy. When you step back, it makes you wonder if everyone is just going to keep slowly walking towards the abyss until the project or game fails. Is this what it means to be a leader in games? In tech? To endlessly repeat the same sequence of meetings without really moving the needle? To spend hours trying to get Jira tickets and dashboards where they should be? To pretend that everything is fine when you know deep down it really isn't? It doesn't have to be this way. You can make a difference. You can help your team and game succeed, but sometimes you need a bit of help to get there. I've started a game dev leadership accelerator. It aims to level up leaders who see opportunities to make a difference but don't know how to capitalize on them. We'll walk through what it means to lead well and give you tools to understand your organization's challenges and implement changes to overcome them. Game dev is hard. Knowing how to lead will give you an edge. It will still be hard, but you'll be ready to tackle it. If you're interested, let me know below. Hit the link. I hope to see you in the accelerator because I believe better leaders will help teams make better games, and I look forward to someday playing what you create.